The morning sun cast long shadows through the bedroom window as Jane stared at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test. Her hands trembled as she checked the 3rd test of the morning, also positive. She needed to tell Tom, but something in her gut warned her that this news might not bring the joy it should. Tom wasn't in their bedroom or the kitchen. Jane found him in his home office, surrounded by floating holographic equations and quantum calculations. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes had the red tinge of someone who hadn't slept in days. The desk was cluttered with coffee cups and half-eaten energy bars. "Tom," she said softly, "we need to talk." He didn't look up from his work. "Can it wait?" "I'm close to a breakthrough on the quantum tunneling project. The military needs these calculations by tomorrow." "I'm pregnant." The holographic equations flickered as Tom's hand jerked in surprise. He slowly turned his chair to face her, his face pale. That's impossible. We were careful." "Well, it happened." Jane placed the 3 positive tests on his desk. "And it's not just one baby. The doctor called earlier. The initial scans show multiple heartbeats." Tom stood up so quickly his chair rolled back and hit the wall. He paced the small office, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. No. This isn't the right time. The project is at a critical stage. The military is counting on me. The whole quantum communication breakthrough. "Tom, look at me." Jane stepped in front of him. "We're having babies, multiple babies. This is happening." He stopped pacing and stared at her with wide eyes. "You don't understand. Strange things have been happening in the lab. The quantum field readings are off the charts. Last week, my own DNA scan showed unusual patterns. I need to focus on fixing these issues before." "Before what?" Jane crossed her arms. "Before being a father?" "I can't do this." Tom's voice cracked. "The responsibility, the timing. And with the weird readings." He walked past her to their bedroom and pulled out a travel bag from under the bed. Jane followed him, her heart pounding. "What are you doing?" "I need to leave." He stuffed clothes into the bag with shaking hands. "The project, the anomalies, now it's too much. You'll be better off without me. The military provides good benefits for single parents." "You're running away because I'm pregnant." Jane's voice rose with disbelief. "After 3 years of marriage, this is how you handle a challenge." Tom zipped up his bag, his movements jerky and panicked. "You don't understand. Something's wrong with me. The quantum experiments, they're changing things. Changing me. I don't know what might happen to the babies. It's safer if I'm not here." "That's nonsense," Jane said, but she noticed his hands were giving off a faint bluish glow in the shadows, something she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. "The military will take care of you. They owe me that much." Tom grabbed his laptop and research files. "Don't try to find me. Please, it's better this way." Before Jane could respond, he rushed out of the bedroom. The front door slammed moments later, and she heard his car start up and speed away. She stood frozen, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the doorframe for support. The room temperature suddenly dropped. The lights flickered, and Jane's tablet displayed strange symbols before going dark. In the corner of the room, the air shimmered like a heat wave, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw Tom standing there, older and different, reaching out toward her. But then everything returned to normal. Jane sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. Tom's strange behavior over the past months, the odd occurrences in the house, his obsession with the quantum experiments, something bigger was happening. She pulled out her phone to call the police, but stopped when she saw a text message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Walker, this is General Richards. We need to talk about your husband's work and your pregnancy. A car will pick you up in 20 minutes. Pack for an extended stay. Your safety and the safety of your unborn children is our top priority." Jane looked out the window as a black military vehicle pulled up to her house. Whatever was happening, she knew her life would never be the same. 6 months had passed since Tom's disappearance. Jane sat in her private room at the military medical facility, watching the strange blue lights dance across her swollen belly. The doctors said it was normal, but she knew better. Normal pregnancies didn't glow in the dark. "Mrs. Walker." Dr. Miller knocked and entered, followed by 2 nurses and a man in a military uniform. "Your latest readings are unusual." The babies are developing faster than any pregnancy we've ever seen. Jane wasn't surprised. She'd been in this facility for months, watching her stomach grow at twice the normal rate. The military kept her comfortable but isolated, claiming it was for her safety. Every day, new doctors came to run tests and take measurements. "The babies are coming today," she said calmly. She'd known it since morning when all four of them had somehow told her through what felt like thoughts instead of kicks. Dr. Miller checked his tablet and frowned. "That's impossible. Even with the accelerated growth, you're only at 6 months." The lights in the room flickered. Jane's stomach glowed brighter, and she felt the first contraction. The military man touched his earpiece and spoke quickly. "Get General Richards. It's happening." Everything moved fast after that. They rushed Jane to a special delivery room with walls lined with strange equipment. Doctors and scientists in protective suits crowded around her. The contractions came quickly, each one making the room's lights pulse. "First baby coming," Dr. Miller announced. "This is incredible." The first baby arrived with a flash of blue light. Unlike normal newborns, this baby didn't cry. Instead, it opened its eyes immediately. Eyes that shimmered with all colors of the rainbow. It was a boy, perfect and alert, looking around the room with unusual awareness. Second baby coming now. Another flash, another silent birth. A second boy, identical to the first, but with eyes that sparkled like stars. He reached out toward his brother, and the air between them seemed to ripple. The third baby arrived moments later, a girl with the same rainbow eyes as her first brother. The machines in the room began to beep wildly. Data scrolled across screens faster than anyone could read. "Final baby coming," Dr. Miller said, his voice filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like this." The fourth baby, another girl, arrived with the brightest flash yet. As soon as she was born, all four babies turned their heads to look at each other. The room fell silent except for the humming of machines. "Impossible," one of the scientists whispered. "They're already communicating." Jane watched as the nurses cleaned and measured her babies. They were bigger than normal newborns. Their skin had a slight silvery sheen, and their eyes held knowledge that no newborn should have. General Richards entered the room, looking at the babies with intense interest. "Mrs. Walker, you've just made history. These children, they're perfectly healthy, but they're not exactly normal." "They're like Tom," Jane said quietly, remembering her husband's glowing hands and strange behavior before he left. "What did those quantum experiments do to him?" "We're not sure," the general admitted. "But your children are the first of their kind. They're human, but more. Each one is showing different readings. The first one is emanating energy fields. The second one's brain activity is off the charts. The third one seems to be affecting the cellular structure of things she touches. And the fourth one, we're still trying to understand what she can do." The babies were placed in special cribs next to Jane's bed. As soon as they were close to each other, they seemed to relax. A soft humming filled the room, and Jane felt waves of love and comfort washing over her, feelings she somehow knew were coming from her children. "What are you going to name them?" a nurse asked. Jane looked at each of her special babies. "Alex," she said, touching the first boy. "Ben for the second. Carrie for the first girl. And Dawn for the last one." General Richards nodded. "We'll move you all to a special facility tomorrow. These children need protection and training. They might be the most important children ever born." Jane held Dawn's tiny hand, watching as her daughter's rainbow eyes focused on her with clear intelligence. "They're not experiments," she said firmly. "They're my children." Of course, the general agreed, but Jane noticed he was already typing notes into his tablet. "They're your children first, but they might also be humanity's next step forward." The babies cooed in unison, and all the lights in the room brightened at once. Whatever they were, whatever they would become, Jane knew her life's mission was to protect them, not just from the world, but from those who might see them as tools rather than children. 5 years had passed since the unusual birth. Jane watched her children playing in their special playroom at the military facility they called home. The room looked normal with toys and books scattered around, but hidden sensors recorded everything the quadruplets did. Alex, the firstborn, sat cross-legged in the corner. His hands moved through the air, creating shapes with pure energy that glowed blue like their father's had. He made a butterfly of light that flew around the room, making his siblings laugh. "Look, Mom," Ben called out. He sat surrounded by complex puzzle cubes meant for adults. His rainbow eyes flickered as he solved them in seconds. "I can solve them all at once now." His hands moved in a blur, working on 5 puzzles simultaneously. Carrie knelt by the room's small garden patch. Under her gentle touch, flowers bloomed instantly. "The plants like to talk to me," she said softly. A wilted flower straightened and turned healthy as she stroked its petals. "They tell me what they need to feel better." Dawn, the youngest by minutes, stood by the window. Her eyes shifted colors as she stared into space. "Someone's coming," she said. 3 scientists and a general. They want to do more tests." She turned to Jane. "Mom, I don't like the tests." Jane stood up quickly. "No more tests today. They promised we'd have the afternoon free." The door opened exactly as Dawn had predicted. General Richards entered with 3 new scientists Jane hadn't seen before. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "these experts have come from another facility. They'd like to observe the children." "No," Jane said firmly. "They've already had 2 test sessions this morning. They need time to just be kids." The children moved closer to their mother. Alex's energy butterfly disappeared, and the air around them began to crackle with protective energy. Ben's eyes flashed as he processed everything about the newcomers. Carrie's plants turned their blooms toward the scientists like guards. Dawn stepped forward, her eyes swirling with colors. "They want to separate us," Dawn announced. "They think we develop our abilities faster if we train alone." The other children reacted instantly. The room's lights flickered as Alex's energy field grew stronger. Ben spoke rapidly, calculating all escape routes. Probability of successful escape, 64.3%. Carrie's plants grew rapidly, their vines creating a barrier between the children and the door. "Nobody is separating anybody," Jane said, her voice strong and clear. "That was our deal, General. The children stay together or we leave." General Richards frowned. "Mrs. Walker, you have to understand. Each child shows different abilities, specialized training called." "Our powers work better together," Ben interrupted. "I've calculated it. We're 147% more effective when we're all in the same room. And we can feel each other's feelings," Carrie added. "Being apart hurts." "They're telling the truth," Dawn said, looking directly at the general. "I can see what happens if you separate us. It doesn't end well." The scientists whispered among themselves, taking notes. One stepped forward with a scanner, but Alex's energy field pushed it gently away. "Please," Alex said politely, "no more tests today." The lights in the room pulsed gently with his words. General Richards looked at the children, then at his frustrated scientists, and finally at Jane's determined face. "Fine," he sighed, "no tests today. But Mrs. Walker, we need to talk about their future training schedule." After they left, the children returned to their play, but differently now. They sat in a circle, holding hands. Jane watched as they communicated in their special silent way, rainbow eyes glowing softly. "Mom," Dawn called out, "come sit with us. We want to show you something." Jane joined their circle. As soon as she held Alex and Dawn's hands, she felt it, their love, their fears, their determination to stay together. And something else, a secret they all shared. They were getting stronger every day, learning things the scientists couldn't imagine. "Don't worry, Mom," Ben said. "We won't let them separate us. We have a plan." "We just need more time," Carrie added as a flower crown grew and wove itself around Jane's head. "Time for what?" Jane asked. Dawn smiled mysteriously. "Time to find Dad. He's not lost, Mom. He's waiting. And soon we'll be strong enough to reach him." The room hummed with energy as the 4 children shared a knowing look. Jane realized that while the military thought they were observing and controlling her children, the quadruplets were actually 10 steps ahead, playing their own game, waiting for the right moment to show their true powers. 10 years had passed since their birth, and the quadruplets were in their family's private quarters at the military base. Ben sat at the main computer, his fingers moving faster than human eyes could follow. His siblings stood around him, watching as he broke through the facility's security systems. "Aren't you sure about this?" Jane asked, watching nervously from the doorway. "If they catch you in their systems." "They won't," Alex said confidently, his energy field disrupting the room's surveillance cameras. I'm blocking their monitors. They think the system is just having normal glitches. Dawn's eyes swelled with rainbow colors. We have 18 minutes before anyone comes to check on us. Keep going, Ben. Ben nodded, his own rainbow eyes reflecting the streams of code on the screen. There's something hidden in the base's AI system. I've seen traces of it for months. Files that don't match anything else. Dad's research files. Carrie placed her hand on Ben's shoulder, sharing her energy with him. Living things responded to her touch. Even machines seemed to work better when she was near. The files are locked behind quantum encryption, she said, but together we can break it. The screen flickered as Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard. Alex's energy merged with the computer, boosting its processing power. Dawn's eyes glowed brighter as she guided them through possible futures, helping them choose the right encryption keys. Suddenly, the screen filled with files, hundreds of them. Video logs, research notes, and personal journals, all belonging to their father Tom. Play the last video, Dawn whispered. That's the important one. Ben opened the video file. Their father's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but excited. The timestamp showed it was recorded the day before he left. If you're seeing this, Tom's recorded image said, it means my children have inherited the quantum alterations in my DNA. I'm recording this message because tomorrow's experiment will either change everything or... He paused, running a hand through his hair just like Ben did when he was worried. The quantum communication project wasn't what everyone thought, Tom continued. We weren't just trying to send messages through space. We found something, another dimension, pressing against ours. They've been trying to contact us, but normal humans can't survive the connection. The quantum experiments changed my DNA, prepared me to be a bridge. The quadruplets looked at each other. This explained so much about their abilities. But there's a problem, Tom's recording continued. The change is unstable in me. Tomorrow, I'll try to make contact again. If it works, I'll be humanity's first ambassador to a dimension of pure energy and thought. If it fails, he looked down. Jane, if you see this, I'm sorry I left. I didn't abandon you. The experiment went wrong. I'm trapped between dimensions, but I'm alive. Our children, they're the next step, perfect bridges between worlds. They'll be able to do what I couldn't. Jane stepped forward, touching the screen where Tom's face smiled sadly. He didn't leave because of us, she whispered. He was protecting us. The military knew, Ben said, scanning through other files. They've known all along where Dad is. They're using the data from our tests to try to recreate the experiment. But they can't, Alex added, energy crackling around his hands. They need us, all four of us together, to make it work. Dawn's eyes flashed. Dad's consciousness is scattered across dimensions. That's why I sometimes see him in possible futures. He's not completely gone, just spread out. We can bring him back, Carrie said firmly. My power doesn't just work on living things here. I can feel life in other dimensions too. I can help stabilize him. But we'll have to be careful, Ben warned, quickly copying all the files. The military won't want us to try. According to these files, they think dimensional contact should be controlled by them, not by individuals. How long until we're strong enough? Jane asked. The quadruplets joined hands, forming their special connection. Their rainbow eyes glowed in unison as they shared thoughts and powers. 3 days, Dawn answered. We'll be ready in 3 days. But Mom, she turned to Jane with serious eyes. When we bring Dad back, nothing will be the same. The other dimension. They've been waiting for us. We're not just bringing Dad home. We're opening a door that can never be closed. The lights in the room pulsed with Alex's energy as the children shared a determined look. They had the truth now and a mission. Their father wasn't lost. He was waiting, scattered across dimensions, and only they had the power to make him whole again. The next morning, the quadruplets sat in their special training room, but today was different. After finding their father's files, they couldn't focus on the military's simple tests. They had bigger things to understand. Show me again, Ben said to Alex, his rainbow eyes analyzing every detail as his brother created energy patterns in the air. Dad's notes mentioned quantum entanglement. I think that's what's happening when we use our powers. Alex formed a complex web of blue light between his hands. Like this, The energy pulsed in time with his heartbeat. It feels like I'm reaching into another place when I do this. Carrie touched one of the energy strands. Instead of breaking, it grew stronger, sprouting new patterns like a living thing. We're not just human anymore, she said softly. When I heal things, I can feel the other dimension. It's full of energy and life, different from ours but connected. Dawn stood by the window, her eyes shifting through colors as she looked through possible futures. The military thinks they're studying us, but they don't understand. We're not experiments that went right, we're doorways that never close. Ben pulled up a holographic display showing their DNA structure. Look at this. Normal human DNA looks like a twisted ladder. Ours looks like... He paused, searching for a simple way to explain it. Like a bridge, Alex finished. See how the patterns stretch out? Like they're reaching for something. Jane watched her children with growing understanding. Your father's quantum experiments didn't just change his DNA. When he got trapped between dimensions, the change passed to you. But you're stable where he wasn't. More than stable, Ben said excitedly. We're perfectly adapted. Each of us controls a different part of the connection. He pointed to his siblings one by one. Alex can create and control quantum energy fields. I can process quantum information instantly. Carrie can manipulate the living energy between dimensions. And Dawn can see through dimensional barriers into possible futures. The door opened and General Richards walked in with two scientists. He stopped when he saw the holographic DNA display. How did you access those files? He demanded. You can't keep secrets from us anymore, Dawn said calmly. We know everything now. About Dad, about the other dimension, about why you're really studying us. The general's face turned red. Those files are classified. You want to use us, Alex interrupted, his energy field growing stronger. You think we're weapons you can control. Tools to reach the other dimension. But we're not tools, Carrie added. Her power flowed through the room, making all the plants turn toward her. We're bridges, living bridges between worlds. Ben stood up, his eyes flashing as he processed more information. You've been lying to everyone. Telling them you're protecting us, when really you're just waiting until we're strong enough to open a permanent doorway to the other dimension. A doorway you think you can control, Dawn finished. But you can't. Only we can control it, and only together. General Richards looked at Jane. Mrs. Walker, control your children. This is beyond. No, Jane said firmly. They're right. I've watched you study them for 10 years. You've never seen them as children, only as assets. But they're more than that. They're the next step in human evolution. The quadruplets joined hands, forming their special circle. Rainbow light filled the room as their powers combined. The air shimmered with quantum energy as reality itself seemed to bend around them. We can feel Dad, Carrie whispered. He's out there, scattered across dimensions, but still alive. The other dimension didn't choose him randomly, Ben said, his voice filled with excitement. They were preparing the way, making sure their first contact would be through family bonds, through love, not military power. That's why there are 4 of us, Dawn realized. One bridge wasn't enough. It needs all of us working together, keeping each other stable. The general stepped back as the quantum energy grew stronger. What are you doing? What we were born to do, Alex answered. The light from their combined powers filled the room. We're not just bringing Dad back. We're opening the door to humanity's next great step forward. Through the window, the sky began to shimmer with rainbow colors, and somewhere between dimensions, Tom Walker felt his children reaching for him, their love creating a bridge across the infinite. The cold, sterile lights of the colony's main research hub flickered as David Miller stepped through the automated doors. His footsteps echoed with a nervous rhythm, betraying the confidence he tried to project. 5 years had passed since he had walked away from his pregnant wife and the life he once knew. David had prepared himself for many scenarios. He expected to find struggling children, perhaps weak and underdeveloped. He imagined Alina would be desperate, perhaps even grateful for his return. What he found instead was something entirely beyond his wildest predictions. 4 children sat in a perfect semicircle, their eyes locked on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Marcus, the eldest, sat directly in the center, his fingers hovering above a holographic interface that seemed to pulse with living energy. To his left, Arya watched David with a clinical detachment that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old child. The twins, Rowan and Riley, flanked Marcus like silent guardians. They moved in an almost synchronized manner, their breathing matching, their postures identical. David felt a chill run down his spine. "Hello, Father," Marcus spoke first, his voice calm and measured. The word father sounded more like a clinical designation than an emotional connection. "We've been expecting you." Before David could respond, the holographic display behind Marcus erupted with a cascade of information. Personal files, research documents, classified reports. Everything David had ever written, every secret he had ever kept, now danced across the screen in a dizzying display of technological prowess. "Your genetic modification project," Marcus continued, "was far more successful than you ever anticipated." Arya stepped forward, her small hand touching a medical scanner. In seconds, the device began producing a comprehensive analysis of David's physical and biological composition. Her eyes, unusually sharp for a child, absorbed every detail of the scan. "Metabolic irregularities," she announced, her voice clinical and precise. "Early signs of cellular degradation. Probable result of experimental procedures you conducted on yourself before our conception." David stammered, How do you know all this?" Rowan and Riley exchanged a quick glance. Without a word spoken between them, they began to predict David's potential actions. A holographic grid appeared, mapping out every possible movement, every potential response David might make. "Probability of physical confrontation, 12.3%, Riley stated. "Probability of psychological breakdown, 87.6%, Rowan added simultaneously. Marcus leaned forward, his fingers still dancing across the holographic interface. "You abandoned us, thinking we would be a burden. You saw us as an experiment, not as your children. But what you failed to understand is that we have evolved beyond your limited comprehension." The room seemed to compress around David. The children. No, these beings were not just analyzing him. They were dissecting his entire existence, his motivations, his deepest secrets. Arya continued the clinical assessment. Genetic markers indicate intentional modifications. Neurotransmitter patterns suggest enhanced cognitive capabilities were deliberately introduced during embryonic development. The twins began to speak in alternating sentences, their voices creating an unsettling stereo effect. "You thought you could control the outcome. You believed you could predict our development. You were wrong." Marcus's final statement cut through the tension like a knife. "We are not your experiment anymore, David. We are something entirely new." The holographic display suddenly went dark. The children continued to stare at David, their collective gaze a mixture of scientific curiosity and something deeper, a profound judgment that went beyond mere human emotion. David Miller, the scientist who had abandoned his family, now found himself completely exposed, completely vulnerable. The experiment had not just survived, it had surpassed its creator in every conceivable way. The conference room fell silent as the 4 children, the 4 extraordinary beings, presented their plan to the colony's leadership and visiting interstellar representatives. Elena watched from the side, a mixture of pride and apprehension etched across her face. Marcus stood at the center of the holographic display, his fingers dancing across invisible interfaces. Behind him, complex diagrams and data streams told the story of unprecedented human potential. Arya stood to his left, her small frame radiating an impossible sense of scientific authority. The twins, Rowan and Riley, flanked the presentation with synchronized movements that suggested a deeper connection than mere siblings. "Humanity's current expansion model is fundamentally flawed," Marcus began, his voice calm and measured. The holographic display shifted, showing the current interstellar colonization attempts, failed settlements, resource-depleted planets, and countless human lives lost to hostile environments. Arya stepped forward, her hand causing new data to materialize. "Our genetic modifications provide solutions to multiple critical challenges: cellular regeneration, environmental adaptation, technological integration. These are not just improvements. They are a complete reimagining of human potential." The colony's governor, a weathered veteran of multiple interstellar missions, leaned forward. His skeptical expression slowly transformed into one of cautious interest. Military strategists and scientific advisors exchanged worried glances. Rowan began to speak, his words complemented by Riley's simultaneous explanation. Traditional human expansion relies on external technological solutions. We propose an internal solution, humans who can become the technology. The holographic display erupted with images of potential human adaptations, cellular structures that could withstand extreme radiation, biological interfaces that could directly communicate with complex computer systems, metabolic modifications that could allow survival in environments previously deemed uninhabitable. We are not asking for permission, Marcus continued. We are presenting a new path forward. Elena felt a surge of protective instinct. These were her children, beings she had nurtured, protected, and loved. Yet they were also something more. Something that would fundamentally change humanity's understanding of itself. The military representatives grew increasingly uncomfortable. Here were 4 children who could potentially render entire defense strategies obsolete. Their ability to predict, analyze, and adapt was beyond anything in human experience. David Miller, still present in the room, looked smaller than ever. The scientist who had abandoned his family was now witnessing the full extent of his experiment and its potential to reshape human civilization. Aria's next revelation sent shockwaves through the room. We have already begun developing adaptive technologies that can be integrated into human genetics, not as a weapon, not as a control mechanism, but as a tool for survival and expansion. The twins demonstrated. Rowan interfaced with a complex communication system, his thoughts directly translating into complex algorithmic solutions. Riley simultaneously showed how human DNA could be modified to repair itself instantly, eliminating most forms of cellular damage. Marcus delivered the final proposition. We are offering humanity a choice: evolve or remain stagnant, adapt or be left behind. The room buzzed with a mixture of fear, excitement, and profound uncertainty. These 4 children, products of an abandoned experiment, were proposing nothing less than a complete reimagining of human potential. Elena stepped forward, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. It was a simple gesture, a mother's touch. But it also signaled her support, her understanding that her children were no longer just her children. They were architects of a new human future. The interstellar representatives began their debates. The colony's leadership started emergency meetings. Military strategists recalculated entire defense protocols. But the quadruplets remained calm. They had already predicted every possible outcome. They had already planned for every potential resistance. Humanity stood at the precipice of its next great evolution, and 4 extraordinary children would lead the way. The abandoned had indeed become the architects of a new human destiny.